Christy, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 2 of my 2022 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Cerealsly Awesome and Milk and Cookies. So I've stamped my images out with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. The color palette that I chose for today is red, pink, and blue. So I'm starting with my red combo, which is R22, R24, and R29. I'm going to use this for the cereal bowl. So I'm adding a little bit of shading on the outer edges of that bowl to make it look round with that R29, and also putting it up on the back rim. And then I'm going to grab R24, which is my mid-tone, and I'm going to pull that color toward the center, which leaves the middle for my lightest shade, the R22. So I'm going to work my way over the edge of that R24 and make sure that I soften that line there, and then pull that color toward the center, just carefully coloring around that little tongue, and then also filling in that back rim. And just went over any little spots that I felt needed a little bit better blending. And then for the milk, I wanted it to look really pale, but I didn't want to use gray, so I went with E50 just to add a touch of shading to that, still keep it looking white. And then I decided to use that on the bottom of the milk carton as well. So I'm just coming in from all the sides and darkening that up a little bit where I felt like it needed a bit more contrast. And then I'm going to grab my colorless blender and soften the inner part of that so it fades into the white cardstock. Still wasn't enough contrast for me. I do like a lot of contrast, so I grabbed the E51 and just darkened up the very edges of the shadowed places, and then went back to my E50 and blended that once more. And I also did grab my colorless blender one more time to soften that into the white. And then I wanted to add some Rosy Cheeks, so I grabbed R11 and R20, and I'm going to use that on the milk carton first. So I did a little of that R20 and then chased around it with the R11, and I did attempt to add it to the cereal bowl as well, but you really couldn't see it on that darker red color. I also filled in the tongue with R20 and then colored in the little cereal or marshmallows, whatever you want those to be. So I wanted those to be pink and blue, so I just did about half of them in the pink. And then for my blue combo, I'm using B41, B52, and B45. I'm going to start over on the milk carton because I wanted that to be darker. So I'm using that B45 first and just pulling that color in from all of the edges and casting a little shadow there. And then I'm going to come in with B52, which is going to be my mid-tone, and pull that color toward the center. And once again, I'm just working over the edge of that B45 and making sure to break up any harsh lines there and that everything is nicely blended. And then I saved a little room in the center of each of those sections for the B41 and just filled that in for my highlight. And I wanted to mention that I did this particular card today because I know a lot of you might be mass producing like school valentines and things like that. So I wanted something that was pretty simple and easy to color. I am going to use B41 and B000 for the rest of the little marshmallows. But anyway, you could change this up a little bit just by swapping out like the color of the bowl and the milk. You could do the milk in red and the bowl in blue, or you could do one of them in pink if you wanted a variety, but you could definitely recreate this card and make it nice and simple for mass producing if that's something that you like to do. I used C1, C3, and C5 for the spoon and then trimmed these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I wanted to use the Lots of Hearts background stencil to create kind of my own pattern paper. So I'm doing that on a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock, and I'm going to be blending some Lawn Fawn inks on this stencil to create that background. So the first color that I'm using is Bubblegum, and I'm using a mini ink blending tool to just go on here and there, just do little spots of it because I want to use 2 colors per stencil. So the first stencil will be pink and red. This is a 2-part stencil, so there are 2 different ones that work together. So once I have that bubble gum laid in, I'm going to come in with the Lobster, which is my red. And I don't want it to be super bold, so I'm not using a ton of pressure. I just want there to be a little bit of variation in color in that background to give me more interest on this card since it is pretty simple otherwise. So I'm going to continue filling in all the rest of the hearts and just kind of dab the ink here and there where I feel like it's not going through on some of those smaller hearts. And then I can pick up the edge of that stencil and see that everything is looking good so far. So then I'm going to grab the second part stencil, and you just have to turn it until you find the right placement. And there you can see it fits perfectly between the other hearts. So then I'm going to take some Moonstone ink for my lighter blue and start to sponge that on, just making sure that I get some nice coverage. This is a lighter ink, and especially when you're applying it in this way with a light pressure, it's not super bold, but I wanted that 2-tone look, so I didn't want to go too dark with it. But then I did bring in some Forget-Me-Not ink, which is just a bit darker than the Moonstone. And I accidentally shifted my stencil. So if you want to, you can tape your stencil down with some Post-it tape or some purple tape, and that will hold it in place a little bit better, but I usually just use my hand and hold it in place. It's pretty easy to line it back up again and get it back where you had it. And then I just sponged on that ink in any empty little hearts, and there you can see how that looks. So I'm going to set that aside to dry for a little bit while I clean up my mat. And then I'm going to take the outside in Stitch Rectangle Stackables, just trim off a little bit from the outer edge and give me that nice stitching detail around it that makes it look so nice and finished as well. And then I'm going to take some Spiffy Speckles 6x6 pattern paper. I keep all of my scraps in the front, and I wanted this blue speckled piece here, so I pulled that out. And I'm going to die cut that with the large cross-stitched square stackables, but I'm using the third smallest, the second from the smallest one for that, which gives me that nice cross-stitch detail. And then I also did take a little piece of the pink from the Spiffy Speckles as well for a floor. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment, so I'm going to pop that background panel into my Misty, and I'm stamping in VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'm using the sentiment from Seriously Awesome. So I'm going to stamp that down a couple of times to make sure that I get a nice bold impression so that it really stands out on that background since there's a lot going on there. So I'm going to set that aside to dry and then pop my card base in my Misty. I've created that using a piece of Moonstone cardstock from Lawn Fawn, and I'm stamping in Forget-Me-Not ink, and I'm using the Toast Knife and Sentiment from Let's Toast, and then I'm adding a little pat of butter and a little smiley face on that as well. And there is that stamp set. So I think that one works so great with the other 2 that featured on the front of the card. So now I'm ready to start adhering my elements. So I'm going to add a thin bead of glue on the back of my focal panel, and then I can press that down into place, just lining that up in the center of that card front, making sure that it's on there straight. Mine actually just needed to be shifted a tiny bit toward the right. And then once I was happy with that, I can smooth that down. And then for the focal panel, I also die cut a piece of white cardstock, the same size as the blue one, so that I can make that a little bit more sturdy so I can pop it up on the card. And I'm going to glue that together. And then I will take the little pink piece, and that's going to be like the tablecloth for my little cereal and milk to stand on. So I'm going to add that down at the bottom. I wanted that to be popped up on the card, so I'm going to add some foam tape to the back, and then I can peel off those release papers and line that up right above the sentiment. I'm going to use that as my guide to make sure that that focal panel is on there nice and straight. And then I will bring in my images. So I'm going to take that cereal bowl and add that to the card first. And that's going to go over on the right hand side. And I'm going to put it at a tiny bit of an angle just to make it look a bit more whimsical. And then I'm going to tuck the milk carton right behind that. And then I had this tiny trio of hearts that was left over from my previous card. This is from the Scent with Love add-on, and it's from day 1 of my Valentine Card Series. That's the card. If you've missed it, you can check it out on my channel and also on the Lawn Fawn YouTube channel. So I decided that I'm going to use that to fill in the space at the top of that focal panel, as that was looking a little empty, and the hearts are just perfect with those little heart marshmallows. So I'm adding that right above. And then of course I had to add a bit of Stardust Stickles, my favorite embellishment. I just think it's the perfect touch, so I added it to the right side of each of the little trio of hearts. And then I filled in the little heart marshmallows completely because they were so tiny. And that just gave me a nice little bit of sparkle there. And then I debated back on and forth about whether or not to add it to the milk carton, but it just didn't seem like the right place to put it. So I decided to leave it there. So I'm going to lift that up and tip it into the light so you can see how that looks and give you another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed day 2 of my 2022 Valentine Card Series. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post them every Monday and Friday. If you're interested in picking up any of these products for yourselves, I'll have them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here's day 2 of the previous 2 years of Valentine Card Series. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.